Good afternoon folks, welcome to Visordown. My name is Toad and today we are bringing you our launch report of the new Triumph Daytona 660. So a little bit of history. About 4 years ago, Stuart Wood from Triumph, who's one of their chief engineers, told me at the launch of the Daytona Moto 2 edition that that would be the last ever Triumph Daytona that you would be able to go out and buy. Turns out it was a porky pie, and they've relaunched the model with this, a new 660cc inline 3-cylinder sports bike. It's something different in this segment. So everything else, there is a bit of a dirge of parallel twin cylinders, cross-plane cranks. You do have the Honda RS660 in there, which is an inline 4-cylinder, but there isn't currently another triple, and that does make this quite an exciting little machine. So we're over here in Visordown at the moment. We've been riding it all day today, just road, no track, which is a little bit strange considering it's a sports bike. I'm going to tell you everything that you need to know about it, and then I'm going to tell you about how it handled on the road. So I'm going to start with the price on this one. So this is £8,595. You've got 3 colour options available and they are going to be in dealers fairly soon. So Triumph reckon at the end of March, start of April, they should be in UK dealers. Get yourself down there, you can book yourself out a test ride. Starting with the engine, so we've got a liquid cooled inline 3-cylinder 12-valve double overhead cam. It is a similar engine to the one that's found in the Trident 660, but it isn't the same. This has got 3 throttle bodies on it now. The Trident only has 1 throttle body, so you've got individual throttle bodies for each fuel injector and each piston. You've got 95 PS, so around 95 bhp, and you've got 51 pound-foot of torque, which arrives quite high up in the rev range, 8,000 RPM or 8,250 RPM, I think. That said, there is bags of torque all the way through the mid-range, as you'd expect from an inline 3-cylinder from the Triumph brand. Chassis-wise, we have got Showa big piston separate function forks and a Showa rear shock. There is no adjustability across the front or the back of the bike. We've got about 110mm at the front and about 130mm of travel at the rear. You've got 201 kilogram wet weight, so that's ready to ride. You've got a 14-litre fuel tank and you've got a seat height of 810mm, which makes this bike really, really accessible. I can pretty much flat foot on the floor. The standover is nice and narrow, which is really good for a short ass like me. And it's just a very, very accessible bike, just like the Trident is. It's going into this segment, which is for A2 compliant bikes or A2 bikes that can be made compliant with the adjustment to the ECU and a new twist grip. But yeah, it's going into that marketplace and that segment. It's got to be accessible and it's got to be easy to ride, and that is one of the things that I can say about this, that it is very much like that. So how have we got on today on the roads? Well, first and foremost, the engine has got a very, very different character to the Trident. So it's a bit more raucous in the mid-range. It makes a much nicer sound. This is probably one of the best sounding sub-1000cc Triumph inline 3s that I've ever ridden. It sounds absolutely mint. You've got a great induction noise from the 3 throttle bodies, and the exhaust note is just lovely as well, as you'd expect. It's just a real joy to use and a joy to ride. The throttle connection is crisp and clean, there's no fluffs, there's the fuel injection, and everything else is all just sorted so very well that it makes the engine an absolute dream to ride on the road out here in Visordown. The gearbox on the bike has changed ever so slightly from the Trident, and it's not changed really in any other way than they put a new linkage on it. The final drive of this bike is different to the one found on the Trident, but internally the gears are pretty much the same. But because they've put a shorter linkage on it, because of where the foot peg placement is now, you do get a different feel to the lever, and you do have to be a little bit more forceful with your gear changes than I found on the Trident when I rode that bike a couple of years ago. Also, this is a bit of a bugbear for me, so it's something I've got to mention. There is no quick shifter on it. I know there is on some stuff in the segment, and there isn't on some stuff in the segment, like on the R7, it's an option to add the quick shifter on. I just think for that extra little bit of premium, you know, you want a quick shifter, whether you're riding on road or you're riding on track. They just make life easy, especially when they're well set up. You want the quick shifter on this bike, it is going to be about a £300 option, and then I think you need a £40 or a £50 fitting kit as well. So it's something to bear in mind if you are thinking about getting your hands on a Daytona 660 when they hit dealers. I've got to talk about the handling. Obviously this has got big boots to fill. The Daytona 675, 765 Moto 2 editions, they are absolutely fabled bikes. Track day riders love them because they're so good on track when they're set up for that, and road riders adore them because they're so easy to ride, so manageable and so compliant, and they've got a beautiful chassis. Like I said, this has got big boots to fill, but the thing is, it's not going into that super sport segment as it once was. It's not doing battle with bikes like the Yamaha R6 and the CBR 600RR. This is a very different proposition, and that's one of the reasons that we've not been to a track today, is because Triumph is pinning this as a road-focused sports bike. And because of that, the setup is much, much softer than you would find on a traditional Daytona 675. It's much more compliant, and it does have a much softer general feel to it. That's one of the other flies in the ointment that I have with this bike, and I've spoken to Honda's engineers about it, and I've spoken to Steve Sargent, Triumph's sort of chief product officer. It is very soft. It feels a little bit underdamped at the front, and it feels a little bit underdamped at the rear. It kind of squats on the way out of corners, and all the weight's on the back wheel, and the front forks kind of are almost fully extended. Feels a bit like you're riding a chopper, and it just kind of makes it feel a little bit slow steering when you're really, really on the gas and you're giving it the beans. We were riding quite hard today. The majority of these bikes are going to be falling into the garages of people who have either just passed their bike test and they just want a really cool looking first bike that's a proper sports bike, or people who are moving up from a naked and they've always wanted a Daytona and never been able to have one, and they want to park one in their garage. For 99% of the people that go and buy it, it's not going to be an issue. And I spoke to some of the influencers that are on this launch. None of them had a problem. So it might be me being overly critical of the suspension, or it might just be me not understanding where this bike is pitched. I would have liked to have seen a bit more preload and a bit more rebound damping in the front forks, just to give you that really stable front end that you can just completely trust and just throw it into corners. Wasn't quite like that, and as I said, the rear shock was a bit soft. So we got to the lunch stop, we spoke to Triumph's engineers, and I asked them on my bike, and a few of the other guys in the UK group did as well, just to dial in a couple of, well, I think we dialed in 3 steps of preload on the rear shock absorber, not just to give it a bit of a firmer rear end, but also just to jack the bike up slightly so it was sat a bit more on its nose. That did improve the situation, so it was sharper to turn, but you still had that front end where it would dive through the travel of its stroke on the brakes, and then when you release the brake, it had kind of like popped back up again, which leads me to believe that it needs a bit more rebound damping in the front end. Going to talk about the comfort, because this bike is a real do-it-all bike, and when people go out and they buy their first sports bike, their first super sports bike, whatever, they generally don't ride them on track. They just use them for everything because they're so much fun. And on that front, the comfort of this is, you're not going to find a comfier sports bike in my opinion, especially in this sort of segment and this sort of category. The bars are mounted. The pegs actually feel very, very low when you're sat on the bike, and I was thinking that we were going to be grinding them out everywhere, but the ground clearance is fantastic. I've not even touched the Hero blobs down, and like I said, for most of the day we've had really grippy roads, good weather. We have been hammering on, and it's been fairly pacey, but there's been none of that whatsoever, which is really very good. Another really good thing about it is the fuel economy, because I got back to the hotel this afternoon and, like I said, riding like idiots, checked my fuel consumption, and it's telling me that I've basically done around 40 miles to the gallon, which I think is amazing, because you could easily, if you're riding more sensibly, maybe get double that again. So you're looking potentially 70, 75 miles per gallon, 80 miles per gallon, even if you take it very easy. It's only got a 14-litre fuel tank, but that does mean you've got quite a significant amount of range to play with. The only other point of note, and I seem to moan about tyres on every single bike launch that I go on, because I basically think OEM tyres that are fit at the factory, they're never very good. They're always a bit hard. They don't offer the same amount of grip as the ones you buy from your local bike shop. But these Michelin hoops on the cold road earlier on today, when the tyres were cold as well, if you turned off the traction control, you could have the rear end lighting up and sliding around on the way out of slower corners on not very much throttle at all. Spoke to Triumph about that, and they said, well, that's why we fit it with traction control, and that's why you can turn it off if you have the option to. So it's just something to watch out for. If I was going to have one as a long-termer, or I was going to buy one myself, I'd be slotting some Diablo Corsa Rosso 4s onto one of these, and I'm pretty sure it would transform the grip level of the bike without affecting any of its agility or its nimbleness, because that's one of its key features. It's very light feeling when you ride it, very easy to ride it around town, and then when you get going, it just flicks from side to side. Just needs a bit of stability dialed into the front end, and it would be the full package. So, onto the verdict. There's a couple of things I've mentioned already. The tyres, the lack of a quick shifter, which is neither here nor there because they're trying to keep the price down, but the biggest one for me is just really finessing that suspension just to make it that complete package. Like I said, I'm probably being overcritical, and the speed that we were riding today is not really indicative of the people who are going to be owning a bike like this. Like I said, a lot of them are going to be new riders, a lot of them won't have ever owned a sports bike before, and they're moving up from a Naked or a Trident or something like that, so they're probably not going to get the hammering that they did today, but it would just be nice to see a little bit more finesse gone into the suspension. But this does, it offers something genuinely exciting in the segment. Everything else is a cross-plane parallel twin apart from the CBR 650R, and this is a proper Triumph inline 3-cylinder, a Hinckley triple, and that's this bike's real USP. That and the fact that it's got a decently low price, it's right in the ballpark when it comes to the competition bikes, and it just looks great. Not everything in this sector looks great. Not a huge fan of the Suzuki GSX-8R styling, but this, I think, just looks the absolute nuts. Is it a true Daytona? Well, yeah, of course it is. It's got the name on the side of the fairing there. You can read that with your own eyes, and Triumph can call their bikes whatever they want to call them. But one thing that you've got to remember when you talk about this bike, or when you think about this bike, it's not built for people who've previously owned Daytonas. Not predominantly anyway. It's built for newer riders and people that are moving up through the ranks as their first sub-1000cc big capacity sports bike, and on that front it absolutely nails it. It's a great looking thing, it's fun to ride, it's engaging. It just needs a little bit of finesse put into the suspension and it would be the absolute full package. But if you like the look of it, you like the price of it, you want to get a test ride, they are going to be in dealers very soon. Get yourself down there and have a go, because you won't be disappointed. Not as much as I, am making out anyway. Anyway, I've been Toad from Visordown. There is a full written editorial review of this bike going over on visordown.com. And if you've liked that video, please don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you can stay up to date with all of our latest videos. And for all the latest news, reviews and motorcycle features, get yourself over to visordown.com. Thank you.